Volunteer ambulance services have a major role to play in communities. We do understand that a law is putting that under threat. A UCT study says, in fact, they're able to respond faster and can make a major contribution towards relieving the pressure from mainstream emergency services. UCT Emergency Medicine Team member Dr Charmaine Cunningham joins us to explain. Dr Cunningham, good evening and welcome to the program. This was a 5-year study that you and your team had undertaken, and it made some interesting findings. Talk to us about some of these, beginning with why community-run services are able to be more efficient in some of these environments in which they operate.
Thank you, Iman. Yes, our main finding was that within our community, we can respond faster. So normally, Hout Bay, if you look on a map, is part of or close to CPD and close to hospitals, etc. But it is across over the mountain, so often people can't actually get to Hout Bay, so respond services from outside of Hout Bay. So about 30 years ago, this volunteer service was started by concerned community members, and we've now been running 29 years. Next year will be 30th year. And we've just found that we can respond faster than the key performance indicator of 15 minutes to any area within Hout Bay. And for us, that was a really important finding. The study was motivated by us wanting to know whether we actually have a measurable impact in the community. So, yeah, that was the main finding.
That's really amazing, and it's interesting, as you say there, that the familiarity with the terrain, understanding, exactly what that topography is, can greatly enhance response times. Let's talk about the juxtaposition and the context now. How big is the need for emergency care in these areas of study? And what's been your observation of just how tapped out mainstream services are to be able to respond to it?
So we are about 12 kilometers away from the closest district hospital, but you need to respond over Constantia Neck, which is a kind of single lane or double lane, but dual carriage way. We found that the response time can be anything 20 minutes or more, sometimes even 35 minutes to get into Hout Bay. Whereas if we are in the community, it's always less than 15. So I don't know if that gives you an idea. And then I think what also helps, what we have found helps, is that we know the district, we know the roads, we know the areas where there aren't road markings or the house numbers, etc. So if a member from Imizamo Yetu says the green container, we know where the green container is, whereas a service responding from outside of Hout Bay might not know. So that helps us to get there faster.
This is such an interesting model of efficiency, in terms of how you can partner with the community and you can be connected to the community. So, it's not this typical commercial model that typically you'll have where there's an imposition of services almost, or a needing to learn what the complexities of working in a community are after the fact. So that for me, I think, is what's been really interesting in what you're saying. One of the key things that stands out as well is that this is the type of model that can be scalable, not only across South Africa and the region, but across the continent. Just tell us why and how.
Yes, to go back to what you were saying, I think the first thing is that it's about finding a way for us as a community ambulance service, and then as the community, and then the state or formalized ambulance services, how we can collaborate and how we can scale it. And I think that for us is one of the important findings, is that we really need to work on how to establish those relationships and linkages. And then in the rest of Africa, or in a lot of countries in Africa, even in South Africa, we don't have ambulance services, or the ambulance services don't reach to rural areas. So this is certainly a model that can be scaled up or started from a grassroots level. That's how it started in Hout Bay. People inquired about the short courses. A group of community members came together and did a short course. And then for the first few years, they used one of the Western Cape EMS ambulances. Then through sponsorship, we're able to get an ambulance for the community. So it's certainly something that can be scaled and implemented in other areas.
One of the inhibiting factors that you're concerned about are changes in paramedic legislation over the last decade and the effect then on diminishing new volunteer numbers. Just share what that story is about.
So as paramedicine has professionalized, there's been a need for it to have a university degree or longer courses and kind of career progression. And the problem with that is someone that's just completed a 4-year degree is going to apply for a job in the formalized service. And what has happened as this has kind of taken off is the shorter courses, which has traditionally been how we have attracted volunteers, are no longer running. So the shorter courses, you could do a 4-week course and you could start working on ambulance as kind of as a dependent practitioner, so under supervision. And then after 1,000 hours, you could do an 8-week course and so forth. And those guys have always been the people that has joined the volunteer services. So they can have a full-time job as a lawyer, or just trying to think of some of my colleagues, or a data analyst or stuff like that. And then still on weekends or after hours render volunteer service. And this was for us, some in the fire services, some paramedics, short course paramedics worked police services. And by kind of cutting these short courses away, we are losing that kind of tacit knowledge and volunteers.
Well, let's hope that the results of your study, get widely shared, Charmaine, and some of these recommendations, particularly around changes in legislation and its effects, are dealt with so that you can retain that pool of both contemporary and future skill. Appreciate your time and sharing that story with us. UCT Emergency Medicine Team member, Dr Charmaine Cunningham.